Coming up here on this weekend's broadcast, America's renewable fuels industry, important to many farmers, awaits news from Washington. Hello, everyone. We welcome you to this weekend's broadcast. And Mr. Pearson, we're here to share the agriculture story, and that includes a look toward Washington as folks await more direction about the policy.
Indeed, Max, ethanol has been in the political spotlight, especially since the price of gasoline skyrocketed higher back when Russia invaded Ukraine. And this past week, we saw Growth Energy have a biofuel summit in Washington, D.C. to celebrate the end of that summer driving season. Emily Skor, CEO of Growth Energy, joins us now. And Emily, it had been a while since ethanol advocates were back in D.C.
You're right. We have not had our industry have a physical presence of all of our members in D.C. since before COVID, back in 2019. So this was a long time in coming. We met with over 150 congressional offices across 28 states. All parties were very happy to be back in person, to be talking about and celebrating the successes that we've had and some of the wind we have at our backs, and also importantly, talking through the work that we still have yet to do this year and after the midterms.
Well, let's talk about some of the successes we've had this past year. Ethanol really moved into the political spotlight. Emily, what were some of the wins?
Well, I think first and foremost, what people started to recognize, policymakers on the left and the right, was the importance of ethanol in terms of our national energy security and keeping prices low at the pump. You had consumers this summer saving up to $1 a gallon on E15. And so what was great was to see President Biden and his administration recognize the fuel savings with E15 and apply an emergency waiver so E15 could be available throughout the summer nationwide. That was really important. We also had some blending obligations finalized for 2022, the highest ever fuel blending requirement for biofuels and ethanol out of this administration. We also had some wins in the Inflation Reduction Act, important tax incentives that will allow us to continue to innovate and drive down the carbon intensity of our low-cost fuel.
Emily, I want to talk first with that emergency waiver. Getting that E15 into drivers' tanks this summer certainly helped a lot of folks' personal bottom lines, but it goes away next year. Is there the opportunity to get E15 year-round legally?
Well, there is the opportunity, and we have to have E15 available nationwide. We need it to achieve our climate goals and certainly for continued affordability of the fuel. So there is, bills have been introduced in Congress. Congress can take action. We're also working with EPA to explore what options they have available to them. In the meantime, 8 states from the Midwest, the governors have said to the agency, we're going to opt out of your waiver program so we have fuel parity. And those governors are going to guarantee that their drivers in their states have access to the fuel next year.
Is there the possibility that could spread to other states if it's successful in those 8 first?
Absolutely. It's the kind of thing that's going to catch fire. And so you're already seeing there are additional governors who are weighing that. And if we continue to have this conversation on fuel prices, I think that's going to be very top of mind for additional governors, especially in states that are surrounded by other states who are offering this better low carbon, low cost fuel to their drivers next summer.
Absolutely. Emily, you've mentioned, one of the challenges we've seen are delays coming from the EPA with regard to benchmarks for the ethanol industry. Michael Regan spoke at the Biofuel Summit. What was his take? How does the EPA view the ethanol industry in 2022?
Well, it was great for him to address my members directly and in person, and he really echoed comments the president made at an Iowa ethanol plant this spring when the president was announcing the E15 waiver. The president said that we cannot achieve our climate goals of net zero 2050 without biofuels. The administrator echoed that. He reflected on the 2022 blending requirements, and that demonstrating this administration's commitment to get the renewable fuel standard back into a position of growth and driving growth. And he really reflected on the continued role that biofuels are going to play in terms of supporting our rural economy, affordable fuel choices, and advancing the climate agenda. So assuring words from the administrator as we are heading into the rulemaking process this fall.
That's the thing. The rulemaking is where we see those delays, those renewable volume obligations, the blending requirements. Emily, oftentimes those are way delayed from EPA. Is there the potential that they could become more timely down the line?
Well, Growth Energy sued EPA to make sure that they were held accountable to their timetable. As a result, we've entered into a consent decree. So it's a legally binding timetable. EPA has committed they will get the proposed blending obligations out by November, mid-November, and the final obligations out next June. So not as soon as we'd like, a delay, but I do really have confidence that with this court binding deadline, they are going to meet the deadline.
Emily, is Growth Energy going to be prepared to get on the ground when we get all the new Congress people in post-election and educate them on the benefits of ethanol?
Absolutely. We do that every 2 years. And so we are watching some of the key races very carefully. We, of course, support those who support us. And so a big part of what we'll be doing in January, when you have some freshmen coming in, is educating them, making sure that they're up to speed. And that's not just within the Corn Belt, but throughout the country, on the role that ethanol can play in advancing our climate agenda and bringing affordable clean fuel options to today's vehicles.
That's what it's all about, folks. That's Emily Skor, CEO of Growth Energy.